It's the Choke MMA Show. And now your host, Erik Fontanez.
Well, looky what we have here. Another episode of the Choke MMA Show. I am your host, Erik Fontanez, as always, with my friend in the Phantom Zone, ESK himself, E. Spencer Kite. ESK, what up, man?
Nothing. Get my General Zod on, as always.
Always. And we appreciate
how I like
that. I know that's how you like it. And that's why I brought you on here, man, because I know you like it all boxed in and everything. So we throw you on the screen and you do well. You look good, by the way.
Thank you. I'm trying. I got cleaned up today. There was a hat last week, some scruff, a little more clean shaven. I'm going on vacation this week, so
Of course I am. Another vacation.
I got the shave done before I go so that I can go and just grow it out to the point where it looks like your 5 o'clock shadow by the time I get back.
Dude, you are always going on vacation. I didn't even talk with you about this off the air. You went to Dublin, now you're going to Ontario. First of all, I know you ain't earning a bunch of money, so where are you getting the funds to go take all these trips and travel all over the world?
Ireland was saved up for like 2.5 years. Like, my wife is a very, very financially responsible woman. God bless her soul.
Lucky you.
And so we sort of squirrel money away all the time for one of these days we're going to want to take a trip. And that's where Ireland came from.
And now you're going to Ontario, though.
Yeah, getting back home to Ontario is not that bad. I haven't been home in 2 years, since UFC 129. So it's time to go home and see some people and enjoy a weekend on a boat with no internet, no nothing. So I'm actually not even going to see the fights this weekend live.
No.
It will be recorded and watched at a later time and date. But
well,
yeah, believe me, it pains me.
You're leaving work for Ontario.
Yeah.
Okay. Whatever.
Yeah.
You go do your thing. You go enjoy your second vacation.
It gives you an opportunity to have Dwayne Finley back on the show.
Yes.
And to MS paint my name out of the logo.
Well, that's what I'm very good at is Microsoft Paint.
Yes.
That's why I get paid the big bucks.
Very basic paint tools.
I just couldn't figure out how to use any other software. Admittedly, I'm not even really good at Photoshop. So you expect me to hammer out a new graphic for our show? No. It's not going to happen. MS Paint it is. So since our last show in which we covered all things happening in the UFC and in MMA, Ronda Rousey spoke on the record about the longevity of her career.
Yes.
She says she does things in 4-year spurts, and now she is 2 years into her MMA career.
Right.
Just having joined the UFC. So that would mean she has 2 years left. And sure enough, she said she has about 2 years left until something else comes along. Now, I spoke with a source close to her that said this isn't completely out of the realm of possible. There's a good chance she could be gone from fighting before the age of 30. I think she's 26 now. So she wants to go and do other things. And you know what? I think a Twitter follower gave me some grief yesterday or the day before where I said, yeah, Rousey's off doing this again. And they, the tone of their tweet at me was very much, so why shouldn't she be able to? Why are you going to hate? And I'm like, I'm not hating, man. I'm just taking notice, making an observation. She's doing other things, and they're pretty big things. She's got the Expendables 3 movie coming up. She just signed on, apparently, according to The Rock's Twitter account anyway, for Fast and Furious 7. So that's 2 major motion pictures that she's already signed on for. And from what I understand, the filming of each film is back-to-back, one in Bulgaria, and I don't even know where the other one is. And this is all before her title fight in December. Right. So she's got a lot of stuff going on, her hand in a bunch of different little cookie pots. ESK, what's your take on the phenomenon that is Ronda Rousey?
This isn't shocking news to me. Like, this isn't surprise. Like, from the minute Ronda burst onto the scene and became the force of nature that she is.
The force of nature.
I mean, listen, she has become arguably the biggest star in this sport in the span of 2 years. And so, having seen Gina Carano make that transition and be courted by Hollywood, you knew they were going to come calling for Ronda at some point. As much as Dana White wants to always roll out you can make more money doing this, you're not going to make more money doing films. The two films that she signed up for, their latest installments made a combined $1 billion worldwide.
Is that an official number? $1 billion?
Yeah,
or is it more like a gajillion?
I think it's actually like over $1 billion. I haven't run the numbers. I didn't do the math
it's
myself.
Lots of George Washingtons.
Yeah, they made a lot of money, and so you knew this was going to come. Ronda has since sort of not backtracked from her statement, but said, listen, quit taking it so literally of 2 years from today, I'm out. It's more of when I'm no longer interested in getting up and going to the gym and pushing myself and having 3, 4, 5, 6 different things on my plate, then I will walk away. Historically, throughout my life, I've done things in quadrennials. So if I'm treating this like another... Yeah, she dropped quadrennials. And I got to drop it back. Shout out to Ronda for using a $5 word.
No change.
And so if she's treating it like another Olympic run, then she does have 2 more years left.
Right.
The thing for me is that, one, I would love to see her stay for 40 years. I think she is incredible to have in the UFC, both from a promotional standpoint and an attraction standpoint. I also think she's a phenomenal talent, and I want to see her continue to get better and continue to develop and continue to help grow the division. The second part of it for me is, with her coming out and saying this and having these things lined up, the UFC needs to enact the post-Ronda Rousey plan starting now.
Something tells me you wrote something about this, ESK, did you not?
I did. I wrote something about this for Sportsnet.ca. Came out on Monday. Just saying that, the UFC has historically sort of waited until the changing of the guard has happened or the torch has been passed to really get behind somebody new. We saw that with Chris Weidman going into his fight with Anderson Silva. That was really the first push he got. They can't afford to wait with sort of the next wave of women's fighters or the next potential stars in this division, because once Ronda's gone, it will be too late. So over these next couple of years, they need to make sure to give people like Sarah McMahon, Sarah Kaufman, Miesha Tate, Kat Zingano, the push that they need to sort of put them out there to a larger audience, so that if one of them is going to become the next big star and eventually next champion, if that doesn't happen to become Miesha Tate when she fights Ronda Rousey in this rematch, then they've already sort of established that before Ronda leaves, because the last thing you want is for Ronda to go, all the air and all the momentum of this division to be sucked out of it, and then you're left trying to build it back up again when nobody's necessarily paying attention.
One person that will not get a push is Sheila Gaff. She got the cut.
She got cut. First female fighter to be released by the UFC.
Yes.
First female fighter to go 0-2 in the UFC.
Ouch.
I mean, to me, it's one of those things. Sheila Gaff has historically fought at 125, so moving up to 35 was a means to an end of getting into the UFC, and so this doesn't come as a bit. I think once she lost to Amanda Nunes, a lot of people said probably going to be the first person to get cut, and so she was.
Yeah. Well, 0-2. Just fighters have that happen in their first 2 fights. They're likely getting cut too. It makes no difference that she's a female fighter. I like that they kept the standard right there and said, okay, you got drubbed 2 times in a row. You got to go.
And interestingly enough, today, sort of Bellator kind of officially or unofficially announced that they're dropping their women's division or their pursuit of women's MMA. They had some fighters under contract still, released them from their contracts. We saw Felice Herrig sign with Invicta. We saw Jessica Ai tweet out that, yes, I'm officially released. She too fights at 25 normally, but as someone who I think is one of the top female fighters in the world. I wouldn't be surprised to see the UFC reach out and say, if you want to fight at 35 or fight for us, we will gladly have you. Trains with UFC heavyweight Stipe Miocic. So probably somebody that will get a call and may get a shot in the UFC here in the future.
Let me ask you something, and I just want to get your take on this. You and I have never really spoken about it. With Ronda Rousey going Carano, that's what I refer to it as, going
Yes.
Carano. With her going that direction, and the UFC not really having a plan right now, does that indicate that they're pretty much putting all their cards on Ronda, and they are not really interested in getting anything going for women's MMA beyond Rousey?
I think the fact that this season of The Ultimate Fighter is going to integrate, has female fighters, has 135-pound males and females in the cast. Mm-hmm. I think this is sort of the first of the next steps where they move to more beyond just Ronda. Mm-hmm. I think they've known all along. And once she signed with William Morris Endeavor, that's sort of the indicator that her post-fighting life is being planned out already and starting to look into that.
If people didn't see it at that point, they're just, blind.
Right. And so I think getting her and originally Kat Zingano, now Miesha Tate, on as coaches for Tough brings attention to the division. Having a bunch of female fighters on the cast, a lot of whom are experienced fighters and veteran fighters who can come in and be contenders right away and be integrated into the division, not like we see with their male counterparts who are sort of lower tier to start.
Right.
These are the steps towards building the division out and planning for the post-Ronda era. And I think, even the fact that Miesha Tate and Liz Carmouche were going to be on Fox, Liz stayed obviously against Jessica Andrade when Miesha got pulled. Seeing those things to me is the indication that the UFC knows they need to build out the division more. And we'll see that, I think, in the next year, 2 years before Ronda departs.
Man, my Twitter account is blowing up over this Kendrick Lamar stuff. I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk away from Ronda, because we all love talking about Ronda, but man, I made one tweet about Kendrick Lamar, dissing rappers and saying, what's the big deal? And all of a sudden my mentions column just goes full of people saying, who's hating? Because he's better than them? Because he is. And I really have never listened to a Kendrick Lamar lyric, not one time. I used to be a big hip-hop aficionado, but yeah, I'm not there anymore. I'm just noticing that. We talk MMA all day on Twitter. We get one, maybe two retweets, but we say one thing about Kendrick Lamar and boom, we're trending at the top of the world. And you know who else is trying to trend, man? They're trying their damnedest to trend at the top of the MMA universe. Bellator. They presented, and I avoided talking about this on the last show only because I felt it was so ridiculous. Rampage Jackson versus Tito Ortiz to headline their first pay-per-view this coming November. Well, they did one better, admittedly, I think anyway. Eddie Alvarez settled his lawsuit with Bellator and Viacom. He's now signed with the promotion again after his last contract ran out and after they had that long legal battle with the UFC matching and yada, 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 yada. He's fighting Mike Chandler again for the Bellator lightweight title. A really intriguing fight, only because I think it's personally the best Bellator fight that I've ever seen. Back and forth, and especially with Alvarez getting knocked so many times. I've never seen him get rocked that many times in one bout. So they're going to co-main event the Bellator pay-per-view on November 2nd. And you keep giggling in the background and shaking your head. Shaking it. Why? Why are you not excited about this? It's Bellator MMA, Viacom.
I am excited about it. I think it's going to be a great fight. The first one for me was right up there as one of the fights of the year. Happened the same night as the epic Dan Henderson Shogun Rua fight. So setting that day as one of the best days in MMA history to have those two killer fights on the same day. I'm shaking my head because it unfortunately is funny to me a little bit that Eddie Alvarez is back in Bellator after, you know,
It is kinda
setting
funny.
fire to those bridges and
Yeah.
wanting nothing to do with them. He's back. It is funny to me that a top 5 lightweight like Mike Chandler, yeah, I said it, Michael Chandler is a top 5 lightweight. This
You're
kid is
right.
that good.
You're right. He's
Um,
absolutely that good. And
it,
anybody that
it,
thinks otherwise is silly.
it's funny to me that a top 5 lightweight is the co-main event, Tito Ortiz and Rampage Jackson.
That is comedy. I will
It's
admit
also
that.
funny to me that the more they announce for this card, the more it is becoming the embodiment of everything Bellator didn't want to be and everything Bjorn Rebney sort of swore against, because title fights are earned, not given, except when we need to sell pay-per-views.
Exactly.
Like Eddie, this is the fight Eddie Alvarez wanted. Like, this was part of the starting block for his argument and beef with Bellator was, you know what? I've been your champion for a couple of years. I lost to this kid. And so then he fought a couple super fights that were sort of not super, and then had this big holdout. Now we've missed him for the last little while. He, for whatever shortcomings and sort of objections you may have about Eddie Alvarez, he's one of the best lightweights outside of the UFC.
Yes.
And in my opinion, a top 20 lightweight in the world, regardless of UFC. This is the fight he should have gotten in the first place. So to have had to go through all of this stuff and now have, whether it's, you know, whoever you want to put the onus on, be it Viacom, Bellator MMA.
Could you really blame Alvarez for trying to test the market, though?
No,
I mean, he
not at all.
fulfilled his contract and wanted to test himself. I mean, if we're just put the money aside for a second, just talk about it from a fighter's perspective. Wanted to fight and wanted to test himself against the best in the world. Isn't the UFC the best opportunity for him to do that? Yes or no?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So
I think it makes sense that he wanted to test the waters. I think that came though as a result of Bellator sort of just saying, well, no, we're not going to give you any special favors. We're not going to do anything different for you that we wouldn't do for anybody else. And so when the company that has been behind you and that you have helped build, because Eddie Alvarez was their first big star,
right.
He had been their biggest star all along. When they then say, nope, you don't get any special favors, that sort of makes me want to leave a little more. That makes the interest in going and exploring other waters all that more to me. If they had just said, here's your title shot, here's your raise, here's your new contract, Eddie Alvarez sticks around, we don't have any of this, and we've already had this fight.
There you go.
That's me. That's where I'm at with it.
You know, I've been hard on Bellator for a long time now, and I think this effort that with the pay-per-view initially was a joke with Tito and Rampage. It still is a joke. I'm not going to look at that main event as a main event anymore at all. Again,
right.
2006, yeah. 2013, no. And you said it best, man. Bjorn Rebney, if you have to hold a press conference in order to tell us how great this fight is, it ain't really that great.
It's not that great.
But Chandler versus Alvarez, that's a fight that I'll get behind. And that's one that I'll watch. And it looks like I'm going to fork over the cash to order the pay-per-view.
And that's sort of the thing, right? And is that's the one potential saving grace of this show, is if Bellator stacks it. They've got this fight on there now. It's a fight that everybody has wanted to see since November 2011 when it first went down. If they get Ben Askren on there, if they get Pat Curran on there
they have
in championship defenses, they'll get King Mo against Attila Vey, provided everybody's healthy and ready to go. If they stack it up with everybody else that they may have, that they have on their roster that are relevant and meaningful to their pursuits now, it draws interest. And you hope that the big names sort of give the residual glow to everybody else. Everybody comes for the main event that doesn't have any meaning to us as hardcore long-term UFC or MMA fans. Sorry, I misspoke.
That's okay.
But you hope that the casuals that turn in to see these two names that they recognize get exposed to the guys that are around now. And this is a good first step. It's still just really funny to me that the best fighter in Bellator, Michael Chandler, one of the best fighters in Bellator, no disrespect, Ben Askren, who looked great last time out.
Yep.
240 something significant strikes.
Yep.
It's just, I can't take it serious when this is the co-main event to Tito and Rampage.
I'm just going to look at the fight itself.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say Bellator pay-per-view card
Right.
and write all this stuff about Rampage and Tito. I'm taking
Right.
a look at the fight itself. I'm going to report on the fight because I think that's what people are more genuinely interested, not some fight between two guys that really don't have the luster anymore.
I agree.
So, but one thing that people are getting really excited about, especially this week, is UFC Fight Night 26, the UFC's debut on the new Fox Sports channel, Fox Sports 1,
Yes.
or 2, or 3 or 4. Yeah,
One.
Fox Sports 1. Yay for that. It's a stacked card. It's got Mauricio Shogun Hua, Chael Sonnen, Alistair Overeem, Travis Brown, Uriah Faber, and a host of other guys punching each other in the face. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about it with one of our special guests of the Choke MMA show, good friend of the show, in fact. Jeff Wagenheim from SportsIllustrated.com is going to join ESK in the Phantom Zone, and we're going to ask him some questions about the fight card. We're also going to talk about a little encounter that he had with Chael Sonnen and his 10-year-old son. That's right. We'll get into that into the next segment. Check it out. We have a special guest this week on the Choke MMA show. Not only is ESK in the Phantom Zone, but he is joined by SportsIllustrated.com's own Jeff Wagenheim, all the way from New England. Jeff, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Eric. It's been great to talk to you, and ESK as well, man.
Yeah, it's great to see you. Great to talk to you, too. I know we usually just see each other at fight cards. And at those fight cards, I always see you with those live, colorful shirts. And I'm glad that you're keeping up that standard right here on the Choke MMA shirt. Choke MMA show, excuse me.
You're so excited
we should
about
probably
the shirt.
rename
You're
it.
renaming our show.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, why not?
Always keeping up the dress code.
Yeah, I think I'm better known for the shirts than for the writing, unfortunately.
Well, your writing is very stellar, and that's why I wanted you to come on the show. And obviously, you're going to be at UFC Fight Night 26 with the main event between Chael Sonnen and Mauricio Shogun Hua. You're a New Englander, and you're going to be covering it from a local standpoint for the most part. But tell me, give me your overall impressions of this card, if you will.
Well, I think this is like the UFC. This is where the UFC really shines in a card like this because, the main event, it's interesting, but it's not one of these. It's not a title fight. It's not a title fight eliminator or any of that. But it's almost like one of these amazing bottom-up cards where there's just so much stuff on it, and that's what makes it exciting. It's one of those. Sometimes I go to the fights, and SI really often wants me to write about the main event and maybe a couple of notes about some of the fights right before. So I'll show up early just because I want to wedge myself into the press area, and I'm sitting there watching and enjoying, but not really taking much in. But Saturday night I'll be watching intently from the first fight on. It's like it's going to be a real fun night of fighting. Yeah, and one of the guys, and I know ESK could talk about this, Conor McGregor, is getting a lot of attention, and he had his own pre-fight workout, and he's not even on the main card. ESK had the advantage of going over to Ireland and meeting up with McGregor and talking to him at length. So ESK, talk to us about the aura of Conor McGregor and why he's taking over the UFC's 145-pound division.
The first thing I'll say is that it's crazy that a guy with one victory in the UFC and fighting on the preliminary portion of this card got his own media day.
Crazy.
But that speaks to the marketability and promotional draw of the notorious Conor McGregor. He's the best way I can describe it is he is a tour de force. He is just, you automatically get sucked into the vortex of excitement with this kid because he is what you see on TV and what you see in interviews is what he's like walking down the street. It's what he's like when he's driving his car, which my wife and I had I don't know if I want to call it the pleasure of being in a car with him. It was kind of nerve wracking because he was going really fast down really crowded streets that at some points kind of feel like they're one way. So we came up to a point of
notoriously
being
driving fast,
face to face with another car, and he just kind of sat there waiting for them to back up, and surprisingly they did. I understand some of the backlash because we've seen so many guys come into the UFC and talk a huge game and fail to produce. I think Conor is the real deal. In getting the chance both to speak with him, see him train a little bit, and sit down with his coach, John Kavanagh. John said to me that 2 years ago or so, something clicked with Conor. He sort of wasn't taking it all that seriously before, had some different stuff going on. But if you go and look at his record now, he's on a 9-fight winning streak, and that dates back to that 2 years ago where John said it just clicked. He decided, this is what I need to do. This is how I'm going to provide for myself. And he made a promise to his parents, actually. He told his dad, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time, a self-made millionaire by the time I'm 25. He just turned 25 last month. I don't think he's quite a millionaire yet, but he seems to be on his way. And the thing to me is he really just, the confidence that's there, and I talked to him yesterday, it's similar to me. It's a little more over the top than Chris Weidman, but it's similar to me as Chris in that there's no part of it that's faked. There's no part of it that he's just saying this for effect. He has believed in, and the quote he gave me when I met him in Ireland, you know, when all of this had just blown up for him from his first win was, I thought I was a superstar long before this. Like, I've been walking around living this life even before anybody knew who I was, even before anybody wanted to take pictures with me and say hi and shake hands. That's what was happening in my head as I passed people on the street. So this is something he's been gunning for a long time. And so as much as we always have that hesitancy to really get behind guys that have a single win in the UFC and are getting this big push, he's one of the guys that I think can actually deliver.
Jeff, what's your take on McGregor? I know you've watched him come up to this point. What's your take on him?
Why not get behind him? I mean, you know, you just said he's real. He is who he is, and you know, I was hoping to go into that press of the workout today. I was, of course, dragging my feet on getting a story done, and
like we all do. So don't worry, we won't blame you one bit.
Sorry about that, readers. I eventually got it up online, but it took me a while, and so I missed out on driving in there. But I saw some pictures from it, and it was a huge crowd, and you know, good for him. And you know, the thing is, even if he reaches a plateau and goes no farther, it's still an interesting thing. This guy is like, he's the real deal. And you watch, you know, today I watched that Brimage fight that he did. And well, one thing was I'd forgotten that he actually did get clipped a couple of times. He has to watch out for that. But when he was so precise with his striking and so confident, and just, you know, it was like no wasted effort. It was almost as though he exerted every single movement he made was effective to some end, whether it was getting out of the way of a punch or unleashing one of his own. So, man, you know, I'm really looking forward to seeing him. I think it's going to be a really fun. He's got a challenge this weekend. It's a really good fight this weekend. Yeah,
you know, I watched that same video today. I posted it up on GracieMag.com for everybody to watch. And one of the things that stuck out to me was exactly what you were talking about, Jeff, his precision. His precision and speed kind of reminds me, and forgive me if this seems totally out of this world, but he kind of reminds me of an old school Anderson Silva, where he still had the speed, he still had the precision, and he was ducking out of the way of punches that were coming at will. Now, mind you, you know, you're right. He did get clipped with a couple times from Brimage in that fight, but for the most part, he was still walking with that swagger, that confidence to where he could, you know, duck out of the way of anything that Brimage threw at him. And every time Brimage came forward, McGregor, sure enough, hit him with a counterpunch and right on the money too. He wasn't falling off at any point during that fight. Really interesting prospect. I really would like to see him do well in the UFC, and personally, I'd like to see what he could do against the top 5 in the division of 145 pounds. And ESK and I have talked about it in the past about what a fight with Jose Aldo would be like, and the fan in me comes out for a fight like that because I just want to see what kind of carnage happens in that kind of thing. Don't you guys?
Well, yeah. I mean, I do think we have to slow down a little bit, though. I mean, he has a real challenge this weekend, and you know that we'll learn a little bit more about him. And if he comes through, then he steps up the ladder a little bit and takes another challenge. And I do think they're going to be smart with him, and they're not going to just ride the wave and say, hey, okay, let's put him in with Aldo. I mean, I think they're going to get fights. But you're right. And I don't think it's out of line to make that Silva comparison. If you're thinking about it, from an offensive standpoint. He was precise with his strikes. He was not so. He didn't get out of the way of everything. It just so happened that I don't think Brimage is that great of a striker, but the guy still hit him with a few things.
Right.
So if he can work on that defense a little bit, if he can have Anderson's defense, that would come a long way. But right now he has that kind of that offense where you feel like every time he throws something, it's going to land, and that's a pretty dangerous thing. But I love the hype, and I love watching him fight. I love his style, and I like the personality. But I do want to sort of slow it down and say, okay, let's just see what he can do a little bit.
That's just me being a fanboy, admittedly.
Yeah.
I know he's not. I don't think he should get into a fight with Aldo next or any time within the next 2 to 3 months. Nothing like that. I'm just thinking from the outside looking in, what a fight between Conor McGregor and Jose Aldo would be like, and I just start to get all tingly inside. Yeah. And that doesn't happen a lot for me at 145 pounds, so that's why I like to bring it up. But Jeff, you had a unique opportunity as well recently with one of the UFC Fight Night participants, Chael Sonnen, and you had an opportunity to sit with him and your 10-year-old son. Is that right?
That's right. Well, I got a call from the UFC folks saying that they were going to bring Chael into Boston. It was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, and they were going to be having one of these whirlwind days where he flies in on us on the red eye, does all the TV news morning shows, does a few more appointments, and then he's out. And they know I live about an hour and a half from Boston, and so they called me and asked if I wanted to come in. And it just so happens that same day, I was scheduled to take my son to a bluegrass festival for a weekend of camping and all this. So at first I said, nah, I don't think I can do it. But then I thought it'll be an adventure. Why not? So
right.
And it was not exactly on the way, but more or less. So we drove into Boston and I told my kid, okay, just be quiet. And if you sit here quietly, I got to do this interview. And Chael was very low energy because he had just flown in overnight. He was there with his wife and with one of the UFC PR guys. And very low energy, sort of uncharacteristically so. But it was a fun chat. We had a really nice time. And at the end, I had promised my son that if he kept quiet the whole time, I would let him ask a question. And as soon as my son asked a question, Chael sort of brightened up, and then he became sort of like the Chael you're used to, and he sort of leaned forward and gave one of those kind of answers that you always hear him give in interviews. Right. And it was really a lot of fun. And then he actually turned the tables on the kid and because he saw his bluegrass, his fiddle sitting on the floor of the cafe, and he started asking him something. So it was a fun. The story's up online now at si.com/MMA. So if you want to check it out, it is up there, and I had a lot of fun with it. But the takeaway I got from Chael was that he's sort of taking things as they come right now. I mean, after his last loss, it was as though he essentially had all the paths were closed. He had lost to Anderson Silva twice. He had gotten demolished by John Jones. So what was he going to do? He's going to go to heavyweight? Well, I don't think so. Is he going to go to welterweight? I don't think so. So he was sort of on a dead end street. But then along comes Chris Weidman and knocks Silva off, and that sort of opens things up for Sonnen again because he's never faced Weidman. So the UFC is not going to say, well, he's already lost to him. So now, if he can get by this fight this weekend, drop that down to middleweight again and put together, a win or two, the way he talks, he'll find a way to get himself into a fight with Weidman. And it's not inconceivable that we could see that happen. If, of course, Weidman has to also cooperate. He has to beat Anderson Silva in the rematch, because if Silva's back on top again, then there goes Chael. So, it was an interesting time to spend with him. But he was much more relaxed and kind of, just sort of taking things as they come now, which I found interesting.
Yeah, there's a very different Chael when the camera isn't necessarily on or a radio microphone in front of him or something like that. What are your impressions of this fight? Like when this fight was first, when Chael because this is another fight that Chael kind of talked his way into and said, I'll fight Shogun. Nogueira can't do it. Surprise, surprise. Nogueira's out. I'll get in there. And then it didn't come together. We sort of spoke off the top about this being kind of a overall stacked card, not necessarily a have to see the main event. Are you interested is this a compelling matchup to you, or is this just sort of the biggest names at the top of a really good card?
I'm interested in seeing it. I'm not really sure what is going to happen. I mean, it's funny because the perception of both these fighters has changed a lot lately.
Right.
I mean, Sonnen, the last time we saw him, he was just getting demolished. Not only getting demolished, he was getting beaten in his own game.
Right.
You know, if John Jones has come in and just sort of knocked him out with punches, it'd be one thing. But he got taken down and out
wrestled.
Really got destroyed. And more, he really, you know, Jones did a bigger, nastier job on him than Silva did in either of those fights. So the whole perception of Chael has sort of gone down in my head a little bit. And then you get, you know, then you get Shogun, who also has sort of looked like he's sort of fading a little bit. And so I don't really know where these guys are at. I mean, they both, you know, one of them is going to come in there. It could be just a really great back and forth battle, or it could be one of these fights where one of the guys still has something and the other one doesn't. Right. And I'm not really sure which way that's going to go.
I was going to say, if you had to pick one of them that may still have it.
Well, I mean, the thing, the X factor for me, and I asked Chael about this, and he really said this is not a factor at all. But for me, you know, he's a guy who has his exit strategy already. He's on the UFC Tonight show, and he's on these UFC post-fight shows, and he's already got his new career going. And I, you know, I don't know whether the hunger that he has always had will be there. And if you're standing in a cage with Shogun Rua, you better be hungry, because otherwise, you know, you're going to be eating, you know, drinking to a straw. You know, it could be a tough night. So, I mean, that could be an X factor. But you know, overall, from watching those two guys, I mean, I tend to favor Son in the fight. Other than that, that's the one thing that I think just ruined it for him.
Now, obviously, Shogun Sonnen headlining the card, but me personally, the fight that I like the most is the heavyweight fight. Alistair Overeem versus Travis Browne. I just like watching men that are far larger than me, muscularly anyways, get into the octagon and really duke it out. Overeem obviously has the physique of something you'd find in a comic book. Travis Browne was a prospect, you know, ran into some injury problems and also got knocked out by Antonio Silva, but still I think is considered a pretty good heavyweight. What's your guys' take, Jeff? I think I'll start with you on that co-main event between Overeem and Browne. Who do you see winning?
Boy, you know, Overeem. I find Overeem's approach to the last fight was so lackadaisical that it was really disappointing. On the one, in the first 2 rounds against Bigfoot, he went out there and looked like he was just having an easy time with him almost, and then he was sort of almost too confident, and he gets caught.
Right.
If he comes out and tries that stuff again, I think that Browne will just take care of him. Now Browne, he lost his last fight, but you said he's had injury problems and he lost the fight. Well, those two things sort of go hand in hand, because I don't know that he would have lost to Bigfoot if he hadn't hurt himself.
Right.
He might have. I mean, Bigfoot's, you know, no slouch. I mean, but you know, but if Browne is still healthy, he might win that fight. So I mean, you know, it's a pretty good matchup. I tend to look at the guy who's more well-rounded, who has a little bit more motivation, who sort of, he seems to care more, and I guess that's Travis Browne. I feel like Overeem, you know, if you know, put a gun to his most loved person's head and said, Alistair, you need to win the fight or else, you know, this person is gone, he probably could go out and beat anybody. Right. But it just seems as though his motivation level is sort of wavers around, and sometimes even within the same fight. So I mean, I'm going to go with Browne just for that reason.
ESK.
Yeah, I feel the same way. This is a fight that Travis has wanted for a while, and he talked about even sort of leading into the Gabe Gonzaga fight of, if I get this win, then there's not a lot else out there for me other than Overeem. And so that was sort of on his mind heading into that last fight, and got the victory over Napao. I think it's such an interesting fight to me, just because both guys have very different things to prove. Travis is looking to sort of finally take that step into being a contender and being recognized in the upper echelon of the division. And right now, for me, with Overeem being 1-1 in the UFC, a loss really lands him on sort of one of the biggest busts of all time lists, because it's been, as Jeff said, that last fight was was so lackadaisical. He just looked like he was trying, like he thought he could just toy with Bigfoot. And then, you don't toy with gigantic.
Even before the fight, he
Well,
had the attitude where, this guy isn't going to be anything.
I mean, the whole week it was disrespectful, and Bigfoot said, "I'm going to make you respect me." He had the 19-minute walk to the cage where he was fist pumping, and it was a Dutch house party, and he didn't seem engaged. And I agree with Jeff that if he's focused and he's committed to it, he probably could beat anybody in the division, but you just don't know. And I think Travis Brown, as the more well-rounded guy, as the guy that still has something to prove, is a bad matchup for Overeem at this point, just because we have more questions about Alistair than we do about Hapa. He hasn't done it against a fighter of this caliber yet, but the potential has always been there, where with Alistair, it's like, is he going to fight up to his potential, or is he going to come in and just kind of take it easy and think he can coast through and get caught again? And we've seen Travis Brown finish some guys in impressive fashion in the past. So it should be fun watching the big boy. I'm like you, Eric, though. Any heavyweights, I'm in.
Yeah, man.
I don't care that Overeem was disrespecting Bigfoot all during that week in the lead up of the fight. People do that.
Right.
But it was as though he didn't know the difference between pre-fight trash talk and when the fight actually started. It was almost as though he tried to continue with the exact same thing. And it wasn't even the way say Nick Diaz will sort of stand there in front of you. He just acted as though he was fighting against a guy who was had powder puffs on his hands.
Yeah.
It was baffling to me, and I just have a hard time putting my weight behind that guy.
For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and cut my pick short, only because we don't have that much memory on our camera's card. But I'm going to go ahead and pick Alistair Overeem, and it's not because I disagree with anything that you guys are saying. You guys are putting your points across very well. I'm just going to be the contrarian. I'm going to go ahead and play that role. I'm going to say, okay, you guys are going to pick Brown. Fine. I'll go Overeem, simply for the fact that, there needs to be some sort of controversy on this show, and there isn't enough, because damn it, we're agreeing on everything. Damn you, gentlemen. But thank you still, Jeff, for coming on the show. Anyway, that will do it for our segment. I want to thank Jeff Wagenheim for coming on to the show. Jeff, what are you going to be working on at UFC Fight Night 26? You're going to be doing a live blog? What's up with you?
What usually happens is, and I don't know whether it will happen this Saturday. Who knows? Things often change. But usually what happens is my colleague Loretta Hunt does the live blogs, and I usually go to the event and we'll write mostly about, generally I'm writing about the main event, and sometimes I'll do a little bit of undercard stuff. But I think this weekend, because there's so much compelling stuff going on in the undercard, I'll probably do a lot of undercard stuff and top it off with some main event stuff. So I'll be writing that, and I'm going to be writing something for Friday that'll be a pre-fight story. I have no idea what it'll say yet.
It's only Tuesday.
Exactly. I can't think about that.
It's too far in the future. Well, sure enough, Jeff, we'll look out for that article once it's posted on SI.com. We'll go ahead and retweet it for you, because we love you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot. It's really great to be on with you guys. Take it easy, man.
Jeff.
And there you have it, Jeff Wagenheim joining the Phantom Zone with E. Spencer Kite and myself on the Choke MMA show. I think the Mauricio Shogun Hua Chael Sonnen fight is going to be an intriguing one, and I agree with you and Jeff on this that Shogun is going to meet the WrestleFest of Chael Sonnen. I think that was the terminology that you used, right? WrestleFest?
Yes.
That's pretty dead on there. And yeah, genuinely my favorite fight to look out for is Alistair Overeem versus Travis Brown. And I will go against you on this only because we agree so many times on everything else that I'm just going to go ahead and pick Overeem. But lots of other fights on there. Yuri Alcantara versus Faber, Matt Brown versus Mike Pyle, Uriah Hall, who is also another middleweight prospect, despite losing in his last fight. Really exciting guy to watch. He's going to fight Boston's own John Howard. And Joe Lozon, another Boston resident, is going to fight Michael Johnson, all on the main card. And by the way, that's all on Fox Sports 1. The prelims are also on Fox Sports 1. That's going to feature a great fight, I think, and I think ESK agrees with me on this. Conor McGregor versus Max Holloway, and a list of other guys that are going to come through to Boston and fight on a card that I think is going to be wildly entertaining. I look very forward to it. ESK, unfortunately, you're not going to see it live because you're a jerk and you're going to go on vacation yet again.
Right. Yes.
You know, for whatever reason, because this job is so hard. Oh no, I have to sit and talk about MMA. I hate this. I need to go on vacation and recover.
Hey, I didn't say I hate it. I like
That's how
vacation.
I'm taking it.
I just
That's
like
how I'm taking
vacations.
I like vacations too. You don't see me take me on
2 years, dude. I gotta go see my mom.
Okay, I'll give you that.
That's
You gotta
what I'm
go
doing.
see
I'm
mom.
going to see my mom.
Okay, fine. I'll give you that. But that's all good, man. I guess I'll get Dwayne Finley and MS Paint your name out of the whole thing and do my deal. And that's gonna do it for this episode of the Choke MMA Show. ESK, good show, man.
Thank you. I'm gonna miss this next week. I'm probably going to tape this on my phone myself next week, just because I'm used to sitting here talking to you at this time of day. So I'll recap the fights myself on the airplane.
It's because you can't live without listening to me.
I can't live without talking MMA with you.
That's what you're here for.
That's why we do this.
That's why we do what we do. So, for the Phantom Zone, E. Spencer Kite, I am Erik Fontanez. This has been the Choke MMA Show. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Peace.